he said that the president had asked him to let him know if he'd be willing to take it. Subsequently, he told me that on Sunday the 3rd, he told me that the timeline had moved up and that the president had offered him the job and that he was accepting it.
Well, let's ask about that. What was your reaction to that?
Well, on the one hand, I wasn't going to accept being fired by my subordinate, so I wanted to talk to the president directly.
So basically, Clark, who is his subordinate, tells him, I have your job now.
Yeah.
Clear out your desk.
This is this is fascinating. Like
Yes.
the human interest story here is just
Right.
as fascinating as anything. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because it's like basically the Justice Department's playing whack-a-mole with all these voting fraud claims. And then they finally get to the Italian satellite claim, which they felt was so preposterous.
Right.
And they're like, do we really have to investigate this? And then apparently that's then used for the justification to some extent for him to say, okay, I want Clark to be the head of the attorney general.
If they're not going to investigate this claim,
yeah, the
you're
Italian
outta
satellite
here.
claim, right?
well, it's the letter that Trump wants to go out more than anything.
Yeah, this is all just an excuse to get that letter out.
Yeah.
Really. So, which I think the letter would have definitely hurt the credibility of the Attorney General's office, but
Hell yeah, it would.
highly skeptical. I mean, all the, Georgia and Arizona, they didn't want to do this.
Right.
I think they would have looked at that letter and been like, yeah, that's fine. And they would just put it in the trash can.
But that's why the people who are at Justice are fighting it so much, because
Yes.
it's all downside.
Right.
It destroys their credibility, and it's not going to change anything for the outcome of the election. So what's the point?
That's true.
Yeah.
What is the point? Yeah.
You just basically throw your reputation away for nothing.
Yep.
With regard to the reason for that is I wanted to try to convince the president not to go down the wrong path that Mr. Clark seemed to be advocating. And it wasn't about me. There's only 17 days left in the administration at that point. I would have been perfectly content to have either of the gentlemen on my left or right replace me if anybody wanted to do that. But I did not want for the Department of Justice to be put in a posture where it would be doing things that were not consistent with the truth, were not consistent with its own appropriate role, or were not consistent with the Constitution. So I did 4 things as soon as Mr. Clark left my office on that Sunday, the 3rd. Number 1, I called Mark Meadows and said I need to see the president right away. And he was agreeable and set up a meeting for 6:15 that Sunday, so about 2 hours away. 2, I called Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, told him what was going on, and he said he would go into the White House to make sure he was at the meeting and he would be supporting the Justice Department's position as he had been doing consistently. 3, I called Steve Engel, who was, I was at the department, it was a Sunday, but there had been some reasons I needed to be there. Mr. Engel, I called at home and asked him if he would come in and go to the meeting, which he did. It proved to be quite helpful. And then number 4, I asked Rich Don.
By the way, Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, the guy who's telling Trump, don't listen to Clark.
The Bat Justice guy, right?
No. Pat Cipollone is the White House counsel.
Right.
So he's the White House counsel to Donald Trump. So he's the guy. So Pat Cipollone, who's Trump's counsel, Trump's basically lawyer as president, who is telling Donald Trump, do not listen to this Clark guy. This is crazy. Just listen to Rose and all these other people and let, Justice Department do what they're doing. It's fine. This is the guy who defended Trump during his impeachment trials.
Okay.
So it's not, so he's very much on team defend Donald Trump.
Right. Yeah. He's trying to keep Trump out of legal trouble.
Donahue and Pat Hovakimian, who had previously been my chief of staff, to get the department's senior leadership on a call and let them know what was going on, and which they did. And then Eric Hirschman called me to tell me that he was going to go to the meeting and that he would be supporting the Department of Justice position as well. So I knew that the meeting was on course and that I would have a number of people supportive of the Department of Justice's approach and not supportive of Mr. Clark's approach.
Did Mr. Clark ask you to continue to stay at the department?
At that Sunday meeting, when he told me that he would be replacing me, he said that he had asked to see me alone, because usually he had met with me and Mr. Donahue, because he thought it would be appropriate in light of what was happening to at least offer me that I could stay on as his deputy. I thought that was preposterous. Told him that was nonsensical and that there's no universe where I was going to do that, to stay on and support someone else doing things that were not consistent with what I thought should be done. So I didn't accept that offer, if I can put it that way.
And during that meeting,
He's like, you want to be my assistant? He's like, I know I'm taking your job, but you could still be my assistant.
Yeah, so Clark is telling his boss, he's like, I know that Trump, wants me to replace you because of election stuff, but how about you stay on as my number 2?
This story is crazy. This is so
I mean,
crazy.
that ask was like, that's got to be a fuck you ask, right? Like, there's no way he knows there's no way in reality he would say yes.
That is the thing you don't know.
It had to be a fuck you ask.
You think so? Or you think it's like
obviously. Why would anyone stay on after that? Doesn't make any sense.
Well, maybe he's like, well, you know where the stapler is and stuff. How about you stay in the office and help me out?
You know where the coffee creamer is in the office.
Yeah, I'd like you to be my number 2.
did Mr. Clark ask you to sign the Georgia letter?
That was on the Saturday meeting, January 2nd, that Mr. Donahue and I had with him. He again raised with both of us that he wanted us to both to sign that letter, actually.
So in that meeting, did Mr. Clark say he would turn down the president's offer if you reversed your position and signed the letter?
Yes.
Ooh.
Did Mr. Clark, so you still refused to sign and send that letter, I take it?
That's right. I think Mr. Donahue and I were both very consistent that there was no way we were going to sign that letter, and it didn't matter what Mr. Clark's proposition was in terms of his own activities. We were not going to sign that letter as long as we were in charge of the Justice Department.
So he's Clark is saying that he won't take his job and he can keep his job if he signs on to the letter. So it's a complete power play.
Yeah, it is. So Clark is telling his boss, saying, that letter I wrote that told Georgia to fuck their state constitution?
Right.
The letter that basically lies and said that we found a bunch of credible fraud allegations, even though we didn't, and I didn't actually have any information to make that claim when I wrote this letter. If you sign that letter, then you won't get fired by Donald Trump.
Right.
But that's a pretty oof in the meeting. And they're like, yeah, no. Stick it.
Yeah.
Yeah, shove it.
So he's basically saying, nah, we'll take all. How about this? We'll leave and you sign the letter and send it, you dumbass.
Yeah, right.
Thank you for that, by the way. Mr. Donahue, were you expecting to have to attend a meeting at the White House on Sunday, January 3rd?
No. As the acting AG indicated, we had a meeting that afternoon that related to preparations for January 6th. So I was at the department, but I had no expectation of leaving the department. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was there in civilian clothes, as we both were, and expected to have that meeting, do some other work, but I had no expectation of going to the White House that day.
So let's ask, so prior to that Oval Office meeting, did you set up a conference call with senior leadership at the department? And if so, tell us about that call.
Yes, so obviously it was a bit of a scramble that afternoon to prepare for the Oval Office meeting. We had discussed on several occasions, the acting Attorney General and I, whether we should expand the circle of people who knew what was going on. It was very important that Steve Engel know, and that's why I reached out to Steve on December 28th, because if Mr. Rosen were removed from the seat and the president did not immediately appoint someone else to serve as Attorney General, just by function of the department's chain of succession, Mr. Engel would be in the seat. We wanted to make sure he knew what was going on should that occur. So the three of us knew. We also brought Pat Hovakimian in, so the four of us knew. But no one else, aside from Jeff Clark, of course, knew what was going on until late that Sunday afternoon. We chose to keep a close hold because we didn't want to create concern or panic in the Justice Department leadership. But at this point, I asked the acting AG, what else can I do to help prepare for this meeting at the Oval Office? And he said, you and Pat should get the AAGs on the phone, and it's time to let them know what's going on. Let's find out what they may do if there's a change in leadership, because that will help inform the conversation at the Oval Office. Pat Hovakimian subsequently set up that meeting. We got most, not all, but most of the AAGs on the phone. We very quickly explained to them what the situation was. I told them, I don't need an answer from you right now. I don't need an answer in this phone call, but if you have an answer, I need it in the next few minutes. So call me, email me, text me, whatever it is, if you know what you would do if Jeff Clark is put in charge of the department. And immediately Eric Dryben, who was the AAG of the Civil Rights Division, said, I don't need to think about it. There's no way I'm staying. And then the other AAGs began to chime in turn, and all essentially said they would leave. They would resign en masse if the president made that change in the department leadership.
Incredible.
This is so fucking keys to power. It's so fucking keys to power. It really is. It's like they get them on the line. Who, which way are you going to go in this situation? Leadership is changing. This is a fucking like a moving situation here.
Right. Yeah. Whose team are you going to choose? Are you going to choose,
Constitutional
Rosen?
crisis? Or are you going to choose?
Yeah. Are you going to choose, Clark and Trump? Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. And they all kept it like really kind of hush hush on what was going on, because maybe it never happens. Yeah. This is fascinating.
Right.
Well, I'd like to look at the assistant attorney generals on the screen. If we can pull that up, have their pictures. Did every assistant attorney general you spoke to, as you said, agree to resign?
Macon Delrahim was not on the call only because we had some difficulty reaching him. But yes, the other people on the screen were on the call, and all without hesitation said that they would resign.
So as part of the Select Committee's investigation, we found that while Mr. Rosen, Mr. Donahue, and Mr. Engel were preparing for their meeting at the White House, Jeff Clark and the president were in constant communication beginning at 7 a.m. White House call logs obtained by the committee show that by 4:19 p.m. on January 3rd, the White House had already begun referring to Mr. Clark as the acting attorney general. As far as the White House was concerned, Mr. Clark was already at the top of the Justice Department. 2 hours later...
So before Trump even has this meeting with Rosen, or Trump fires Rosen, the office is considering that Rosen's already been fired, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. And it's extra crazy because he ends up not firing Rosen.
Yeah, he doesn't, does he? In the meeting, they go back and forth.
Right.
This is the contentious meeting that we started, that they teased in the beginning of the hearing here.
Yes.
That they had the little graphic on. We're kind of building to that meeting.
Well, supposedly, I don't remember if it comes out in this, one of the biggest reasons they think that Trump didn't fire Rosen, besides the fact that like half the Justice Department would leave, was because Pat Cipollone, who Trump trusted because he was defending him in the impeachment stuff,
right,
was like, don't fire this guy, don't fire Rosen, this is a terrible idea.
Right.
And so he might have actually saved Trump, he might have saved Trump's ass, because I really think that if he had fired Rosen and appointed Clark, and Clark sent out that letter, I do think they would be trying to charge Trump with some kind of crime about that.
Yeah.